Hey, everybody, this is Gregory Bennett. Thank you guys for being here. We're going to go over some investor questions. We're going to go over investor Q&A. And so if you guys have any questions whatsoever, just go in there, just let us know. Whether you are um, maybe you're a real estate agent. I love talking to real estate agents because one thing that real estate agents don't do is invest. And so I've got my brother Keith here, and he's got a number of questions that he's going to ask. But again, if you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the comments section here, and we'll get going. And so Keith, why don't we go ahead and get started with the questions, and we'll see how this thing goes.
Sure. Got some interesting time. So, Greg, can you explain the Chat GP4 and how it can help real estate investors?
Give me 1 second. I can barely hear you.
Let's see here.
The audio is not that good, and so they're gonna run upstairs and put you on your phone. I'll go ahead and answer the question.
Okay.
And go on the phone real quick. All right, you guys. So Keith asked me the question about the new AI, the new AI being Chat GPT. And so Chat GPT is sort of revolutionizing every industry, and it's going to affect the real estate investing industry as well. And so what Chat GPT is it's artificial intelligence that has come out. That one thing that I've used it for is to write ebooks. So I wrote an ebook on wholesaling, and I was able to use it for that. Hold on for a second. View request live. Okay. Let's see if we can get them now. Here we go. Still have technical difficulties here. Anyway, so Keith, you need to be on your phone. And so I've written an ebook on real estate wholesaling. I've whenever I get listings, new properties to wholesale, instead of me trying to figure out what comments to put, I will just go to Chat GPT, and I'll put in there the address and say, give me a description of this property, and it'll do that for me. And so there's a number of different ways. I wrote a 1,000-word essay on what real estate investors need to know in order to invest. And I was able to post that. And so the artificial intelligence can do all those things and many more. And so my advice would be to get it now, play with it, and just see what it can do for you. But it's here to stay, AI. And so let's just have fun playing with it and see what it will do for us.
Hey, Greg, can you hear me now?
I can hear it. Not as good. Are you on your phone?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. It's fine.
Okay. Sorry for that. But Greg, I had a question from one of your investors. Over the 30 years, if you had to start over again in your real estate career, what would you do differently?
All right. So the question is, if I had to start over again, I think one thing that I would do is get a coach, get a mentor. I've been investing for many years, and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. I've set some goals and wasn't able to achieve those. What a coach does for you is helps you minimize your mistakes and gets you to your goals a lot faster and gives you direction, also holds you accountable. And so I've done very well on the real estate brokerage side, also on investing side. But I feel like if I had a coach or a mentor, I would be even a lot further than I am now. So the one thing that I probably would have changed, and when I got started, it really wasn't coaches or anything. There wasn't anybody really. I got information from this gentleman by the name of Carlton Sheets, and I bought his information, and I just kind of learned on my own. A lot easier, a lot faster if you had a coach or a mentor. There's a lot of people. I'm thinking of a couple out of Detroit that they're doing about 20 deals a month. They have a coach, and they're able to do that because they have a coach. We have a coaching program. A lot of our investors are doing extremely well, and it's because of people like you, Coach Keith, and myself, that they're able to do what they do because of the coaching or the mentorship. So if I had to do it all over again as far as a real estate investor, I wouldn't try to do all this on my own. I would also have a coach or a mentor.
And Greg, tell us about your inspirations to investing.
Okay. So what really inspired me, and come a little closer to your phone. We can still barely hear you. I don't know if you want to set it up on your laptop. But anyway, what inspired me to invest was I read in an encyclopedia when I was 17 years old that 95% of the wealthy people gain their wealth through real estate. And so I said, that's what I'm going to do. So when I read that in the encyclopedia, it was an epiphany. And so I said, one day I'm going to get into real estate. And so a year out of college, 23 years old, I started buying real estate, and I've been buying ever since. So that's what inspired me, knowing that the way to true wealth was through real estate. I said, I'm going to get to the point where I can start buying, and I started right away, and I've never stopped. And I, throughout the years, I've tried to teach other people how to invest. And so those that are listening now and that will listen later, at least for me anyway, the way to true wealth is really learning how to invest in real estate, and then, build wealth that way. And so that's what inspired me to invest in real estate. It's just what I read in the encyclopedia.
And so, Greg, when we talk about goals, what is your short-term goal?
And so I would say my short-term goal would be to build passive income to where I'm making about $100,000 a month passively. I'm getting closer and closer every year. My goal is to buy at least 1 or 2 or 3 properties a year to buy and hold. I have a buy and hold strategy. I'm doing a lot of wholesaling now, and then I'm using that money to buy and hold. And so I'm building a portfolio also through my businesses so that I can make about 6 figures passively every single month. And so I would say that that's my short-term goal. And I'm doing that buying single-family homes and residential between Baltimore, Maryland, we're here in the DMV area, and Prince George's County.
And what did you want to speak to your long-term goal? Where do you want to be at, let's say, 3 to 5 years from now?
And so long-term, I'd like to continue to scale my businesses, and I'd like to get into multifamily and buying 50-unit, 100-unit buildings. And it's something that I've always wanted to do. But that's my goal, is to get there, and then to hopefully one day, probably soon, sell my businesses, but keep investing. Always just wanted to just be a full-time investor. So I would say 5 to 10 years from now, I'm starting even now to build my business to the point where I can sell them and then just invest in multifamily.
Mhm. Good. So, Greg, you've had a lot of investing activities through the years. Tell us about your worst investment. What was one of the worst things that happened?
And so one of my worst investments that I lost a lot of money on was, but I'll say it was worse, and I'll say I lost a lot of money, but I also learned a lot. And so one of my deals was in Bowie, Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, in Bowie. And Nikki's asking if we invest in Virginia, and we do. I bought a property in Bowie, Maryland, detached home. I wanted to put a 2-story addition on the property. I interviewed 3 different contractors. And one of the mistakes I made was I chose the cheapest contractor. And I chose him. I think he was charging me at that time $80,000. The most expensive was charging me about $130,000. I went with the cheapest one, and I paid for it. Probably halfway through the project, I found out that he just really didn't know what he was doing. I then fired him, went to the most expensive guy. Of course, the most expensive guy said, "Look, my price is $130 when we talk, but there's a lot of work that's already been done. I'm going to have to tear this stuff down and start all over." Contractors don't like going behind each other, especially if the walls are closed up. If I'm going to be responsible, I need to know what's behind the walls. And so I just lost a lot of money. I over renovated the property. I put a story addition on the property I probably shouldn't have. I just over renovated for that area. This was a long time ago, probably about 15 years ago. But it's a project that I'll never forget because of the many mistakes. But at the same time, like I said, I learned a lot. And so that last lesson is you renovate according to the neighborhood. And so when you run your comps, whatever the highest comp is, let's say in that area at that time, it's probably about 400,000. You look to see what those houses look like, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what the square footage, and you renovate to that so you can get that top number. I over renovated. I was a little too overzealous, thinking that if I over renovate, I would get even more than what the market bears in that area. And I just made a mistake, and I should not have done that. And so I lost a whole lot of money on that project.
So, Greg, tell us about your best investment. Which investment are you most proud of?
Oh, I'm proud of a lot of them. I recently had a project, I believe it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, in Northeast, where I bought the property for $300,000. It was a row house, interior row house. Didn't need it. It just needed a regular, what I would call a regular renovation, cosmetic renovation. But it was during the pandemic where prices were just sky high. So I bought the price. The after repair value was $600,000. Bought it for $300,000. We put about $120,000 into that property. So I thought I was going to make somewhere around $120,000 on that property. I put the property on the market, and I don't know if you remember, but back then, even last year this time, there was a bidding war. And so the property got bidded up to $650,000. And to my surprise, it appraised. And so it appraised for $650,000. And long story short, made an extra $50,000 on property because of the way the marketplace was. Interest rates were low. There was scarcity. There wasn't a lot of properties on the market for sale. And so I was able to, on that property, I probably made about $175,000 within a 6-month period. And so we've got a question: are interior row houses your preferred property type? And I would say absolutely, especially for a buy and hold. And the reason interior is my preferred is because it's the renovation is going to be the cost is going to be because you're not dealing with windows on each side, siding on each side, gutters, downspouts on each side, the yard space, no worries about that. And so there's a lot of costs that you're not going to have on an interior unit. And if you're renting that property out, it's going to rent for the same amount as an in unit. And if you're selling that property, depending on the market, pretty much the same thing. An interior is going to be the same amount as a exterior, but the cost is going to be a lot less. And even like the utility bills, since there's no on the sides, you're already insulated, and so you don't need any insulation on the sides as opposed to an in unit. And so there's a lot of costs you save, even monthly costs. There's costs that you save, but definitely renovation costs that you save on an interior unit. So as an investor, my preference would be an interior unit. Obviously, if I live in a property, my preference would be an exterior unit. But as an investor, it makes all the sense in the world to have an interior unit. So Robert is saying, I was told that wholesaling was outdated. I'm not sure what he means by that. I'm not sure what he means by that question, that it's outdated, wholesaling. But at any rate, wholesaling, I love wholesaling. We teach wholesaling. A lot of our coaching students make a lot of money wholesaling properties. He might be referring to the bill. I think it's Maryland Bill 300, where it says that you can only wholesale one deal a year if you don't have a real estate license. Maybe he's referring to that. And so that goes into effect, I believe, October. I think it's still at, is it October?
Yeah, October 1st.
All right. So it's passed, I think, it's partially passed, I think. But at any rate, it just says you have to have a real estate license to wholesale 2 or more properties in the state of Maryland. And so they allow you to do 1. And there's, my recommendation always is, if that's the law and that bill has partially passed, then I would say if you want to wholesale real estate, then just get your real estate license.
Right.
And then and you're fine. Obviously, there's ways around that, using LLC, using double closings, things like that. But for the most part, I love wholesaling because of the return on investment. You spend very little on marketing, and here in our area, on average, making $15,000, $20,000 in a very, very short period of time, probably within 3 weeks, 3 weeks to a month. But generally, we're closing in about 3 weeks. And so I don't know where else you can go and make $20,000 spending little, very, very little to no money. Most wholesalers are, the return on investment is about 60%, 60-70%, where a good return on investment is 10 to 20%. And so wholesaling, it's not outdated. Again, I think Robert was referring to the new wholesaling law. Wholesaling will never, ever go away. Wholesaling is the act of putting a property under contract and then selling or assigning that contract to another investor below. That's what wholesaling is. That will never go away. I think Nikki had a question. I don't know if you can see the question. When investing, would you stay away from well water? And so would I stay away from well water? No, I've purchased properties in areas where they did not have public water or public sewage. And so some areas, I would say like in Charles County, Anne Arundel County, I see that where that's the norm. So you've got a market of people that want to live in those areas, and they know how to deal with, septic tanks and and the lot. So I wouldn't stay away from it. If you can get a good deal, I would definitely buy that property. Let me see. Were there any other questions that we missed?
I don't think so.
So Nikki's also asking in Virginia. And so Nikki, in terms of investing, especially Northern Virginia, anywhere you can find a deal. Especially if you're wholesaling. I've got cash buyers all throughout the state of Virginia, even down the Tidewater area, Hampton Roads area, through Richmond, Northern Virginia. Any deal, even rural areas in Virginia, we have cash buyers. I've got a cash buyers list that expands throughout really every area. So anywhere in Virginia, if you find a deal, we've got buyers. If we don't buy ourselves, we've got buyers in those areas.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all the questions. All right. You have any more questions?
Greg, so our investors want to know, Greg, how are you finding your properties?
Okay. And so that's a good question, because as a real estate investor, you guys, your biggest challenge is finding deals. That's going to be your biggest challenge, is finding deals. And I did a podcast on Wednesday where I talked about building a predictable real estate investment business, where you can predict your outcome, you can predict your success. And the way you do that is, I think, through, number one, direct mail. And so there's analytics to tell us, depending on the type of lists we send out and the number of postcards we send out, there's analytics that will tell us, our success rate. And so for me personally, on direct mail, for example, if I send out, let's say 10,000 cards, I'll close one deal. I'll go on about 5 or 6 or 7 appointments. Keep the house that you just bought was through a direct mail piece.
Yeah.
So I'll close one deal. I'll go on the contract, and I'll spend $5,000. You only spend about 50 cents per piece. And so I'll spend about $5,000. I'll make about $20,000 on that wholesale deal. And then we have a pretty robust follow-up system. So not only do we do the direct mail, the list that is sent, postcards are sent out with, we actually get that list. We send that list to REI Skip, that sends us back the person's phone number, name, phone number, address, and social media. So with that same list, through our follow-up system, we send out text messages. We use Textedly.com. We send out text messages to that same list we sent postcards to once a week. We send out an email once a week, because we're able to get that. And then we're working on Messenger to send out a message to Facebook with that same list. And so we always say the fortune is in the follow-up. We get about over a 6-month period, we close about 3 more deals from that same list. So initially 1, but then about 3 more in a 6-month period off that mailing. And so now if you're doing that same mailing every month, or even if you scale it down, this gives you kind of an idea of what the analytics is. And now you can go about predicting your outcome by just using the numbers I gave you. Also, we use telemarketing and cold calling, and so that's predictable. And so we use virtual out of the Philippines. We use a dial, Mojo Dialer, mojosales.com, and through through the calling, the analytics look like this. For about every 600 calls, we get 1 or 2 appointments. Let's just say 2 appointments. We get about 2 appointments for about 600 calls. And just keep in mind that the dialer calls about 300. We have a triple dialer, and it can call about make about 300 dials an hour. So we can go through a list pretty quickly. And so for about every 600 dials, we get about 2 appointments. We need about 40 appointments to close the deal. And so you can just do the numbers, use your own analytics for that. For about every 40 appointments, we close the deal. And I say 40 because some people, the numbers aren't going to work for them as much as we want to negotiate. So those sometimes for us turn into listings. People aren't ready. Just a whole host of things. People don't show up. They cancel the appointment. A whole host of reasons why, it takes about 40 appointments to get one. And so we rely on, our goal is for every one virtual assistant that makes calls for us, we hope to close about 1 deal a month. We hope to close about 1 deal a month. Now, also keep in mind that we're going to follow up on that same list that we're calling. And again, everything is follow-up. So now, if you hire 2 virtual assistants range from about $8 an hour to about $11 an hour. If you hire 2 virtual assistants, you should be closing 2 deals a month. And if you're averaging, let's say 40, if we're wholesaling and you're averaging, just to say $15 a wholesale deal, closing 2 is $30,000. That's a game changer for a lot of people. If you're flipping properties, and here in our area in the DMV, I'll go a little conservative and say you're going to make about $80,000 on a flip. And so if you get 1 a month, that's $80,000 a month. That's a whole lot of money. And so those are the real numbers. Those are the real numbers where you can predict your outcome. We also find deals at auctions. We find a ton of deals through network branding, social media. We find deals that way. I would say though that the 2 best ways is through direct mail and cold calling. Those are the 2 best ways. And like I always tell people, absentee owners, so you can get an absentee foreclosure list. You can even get a list of homeowners who own their properties free and clear in a particular geographical location. So there's all types of lists, all types of ways to get the list. Most of our coaching students use PropStream.com, and you can pull a list there. You can skip trace there as well to get numbers, but you can actually pull a list there.
And Greg, I know that you've already mentioned our Platinum Coaching Program. For the new investor out there, can you offer any other recommendations or tips as they're getting started?
Yeah, so I would say to the new investors, just to take a leap of faith. That's what I would say, to get started. And a lot of our investors just getting started. I think of Dana, who got started with us about a year and a half ago. He's closed 4 deals already. And I can go on and on. And so he just got started. He actually started years ago and he failed at it. Didn't have the right mentorship. Didn't have the right guidance. He failed. And it wasn't his fault. He just didn't have a good support system around him. He found out about us, social media, joined our program, and he's killing it. He's killing it. and we were able to hold his hand every step of the way. We provided him cash buyers. He got his own dashboard filled with marketing material, contracts, video, everything that he needed. I know you meet with him a minimum of once a month doing one-on-one. We do a Q&A similar to this every Thursday night for our coaching students. We go out in the field. Like Saturday, I think it was, we went out to Baltimore and we shadowed two of our students' properties.
Right.
Jay and we went to Jay's property and one of Shalene's properties, and then we had a nice Italian networking lunch afterwards. So we do that once a month, and actually the one-on-ones are unlimited. But if I was to talk to newer investors, one thing that I would recommend is to get a coach or a mentor. That's what you need. Don't try to figure things out yourself. Get a coach or a mentor. Take a leap of faith. I would start out wholesaling. And the reason I would start out wholesaling is because little risk. We can coach you through your first deal in a very, very short period of time. You're not spending any money. You're not using any of your own credit. It's just about your willingness to get out here and learn the marketing and doing it. There's lots of different ways to market. I only mentioned, I think, 3 or 4. But as a new investor, marketing is the key. Just out to market and getting that good coaching is what I would recommend. Chappelle has a question. What areas are your favorite areas to invest in rental properties in the DMV? So Chappelle, that's a great question. So in the DMV, I think right now my preference would be Prince George's County. Although I do invest in Baltimore. I invest in Baltimore because my last property was in Baltimore. I invest there because it's the #1 residential rental area in the United States. You can buy low and rent high, and so that's why Baltimore. I do own properties in DC. I love DC. One of the negative things about Baltimore is that you get very, very little appreciation, and so the cash flow is great. Some of my properties I started off at $1,000 a month in positive cash, and so the cash flow is great. The entry, what you're buying it for is great, but very little equity. You've got to build that in when you buy the property. You've got to buy the property right. DC is the exact opposite. Cash flow initially is lower, much lower. The cost is higher, but the appreciation is just incredible. Just incredible. I always like when I have these conversations, talk about the property I own in Deanwood that I bought about 3 or 4 years ago. I bought it for $200,000, so I'll owe a lot less now. But it's an interior unit. It's worth about $500,000 now. It's worth $500,000 now. So I have over $300,000 equity in a very, 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 very short period of time, and it keeps growing. And so this property is in the Deanwood section of Northeast DC, where I think over the last 3 or 4 years, it's gotten about 70% appreciation. And overall, DC is easily an appreciation, which means 20% every 5 years, it almost doubles in value. But I like PG County, Prince George's County, because you get the best of both worlds. So you get appreciation like DC, but then you also get cash flow like Baltimore. And in Prince George's County, the houses, they don't cost as much as DC, but it's obviously not as little as Baltimore. And so you kind of get the best of both worlds, probably better neighborhoods than Baltimore. And so I actually live in Prince George's County in Bowie. So I would say all areas are good as long as you can get a good deal. But for me, my sweet spot would probably be Prince George's County. But I buy all over. So can you do out of state investing is I think the question, and the answer is yes. Yes. Can you invest from state to state? Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Are there any questions? Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Greg. So I got quite a few inquiries on people wanting to know, how do you know if a property is a good deal?
Oh, so that's a good question, and that's a question that every investor needs to ask themselves, because the number one mistake that real estate investors make is buying the properties wrong. And I see a lot of, I talked about Dana. He bought the property wrong, and then he got out of business, and that's what happens. Buy the property wrong, they get out of business. And so the way you know it's a good deal is we have a formula, and we call it the Mayo formula, MAO, maximum allowable offer. And so as long as you stick by the formula, you know it's a good deal. And in most cases, as investors, we say, and I think I mentioned this before, we make our money going in, or we make our money buy the property right. And so that's the key. Our formula is, if we're, I would say, buying and holding or flipping is 70% of the after repair value minus repair costs. Where wholesaling is 65% of the after repair value minus repair costs. And if you're wholesaling, a cash buyer will buy all day long at 70%. And so your wholesale fee is the difference between the 70% and the 65%, which is 5% of the after repair value. So let's say on a property, after repair value is $400,000. As a wholesaler, you'd be trying to make $20,000 on that wholesale deal. And that's why in our area, an average sales price is somewhere around $400,000, maybe a little higher than that here in the DMV on average. And so that's why wholesalers on average are making around $20,000 per wholesale deal here in our area in the DMV. You do have to buy the property right. And I'm old fashioned. I stick by the formula. I don't want to make any mistakes. I don't want to buy the property wrong. If I can't buy it right, I'm going to walk away from it. And so you've got to buy the property right. But overall, you've got to first start finding properties. I didn't mention driving for dollars, and some of our investors do that. They get in a car, look for older neighborhoods, and look for properties that look to be vacant, and they'll write the addresses down. And then they'll use a process called skip tracing to see who the homeowner is and to get their phone number. PropStream, you can skip trace. There's a lot of different services that you can skip trace. What's it called? Deal Machine. Deal Machine. You can get the app Deal Machine. We have discount codes for all of these, and so Deal Machine. I have an agent, real estate agent, that went driving for dollars, found a property, put the address, took out his phone, put the address in Deal Machine. Deal Machine gave him the owner's name and number. He called while he was still in front of the property. Owner said, "I'm not home, but I am interested in selling." Met him the next day. He brought his contract. Steve brought his contract with him. And long story short, signed the contract, wholesaled it, or signed that contract to another cash buyer, and he made a quick $5,000 in 2 weeks driving for dollars. And so it's not as easy as I made that, but it could be. Consistency, determination, wanting to be great, having a mindset of abundance, are all the things that you need to be a successful real estate investor. And so, and that's what we.
Greg, I've got one more question. Is it realistic for the new investor to land a wholesale deal 30 to 60 days from the time that they get started?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so here's what they would have to do. It's a number of things, but off the top of my head, so we start off with branding. So I would say get some business cards, do some social media. It doesn't have all of this. And then I would invest in a dialer. We at Mojo Dialer, you know how much it is? Like
$130 a month.
$130 a month. And in Mojo, they have lists that you can buy, lists that you can upload. So I would invest in a dialer. Then I would get 1 or 2 virtual assistants. And I know some of these things you're going to say cost money, and it does, but you can get a virtual assistant and pay as low as I'll say you can pay as low as $6 an hour.
$7.
But
yeah,
better ones who come already trained to make real estate investment calls are going to cost you anywhere between $8 and $11. And so we just changed up our VAs, and we're a little on the high side. We're paying about $10.60 an hour. And so I would say for a newer investor that wants to close the deal in 30, 60 days, I would hire a VA to make calls for me. I would hire a dialer so they can use a dialer so they can get through more calls. I would get a list, and you can get the list through Mojo, PropStream, whatever. And I think the biggest thing is I would get coaching, whether we're your coach or someone else is your coach. I could probably almost predict that you would have a deal within 60 days. If you follow those steps and a few other steps, I could predict that you would have a deal in probably, I'll say 60.
Very good.
Anything else?
Nothing else, Greg.
All right, you guys, great questions. I'll have this up on my Instagram page. If you're not already if you're not already following me on my Instagram page, please do so. We'll have this up in probably a few minutes there if you want a recap. Those that are local, we do have a boot camp coming up. We have a boot camp coming up at the end of April. There'll be some information in my profile. We also have a lunch and learn on wholesaling a week from today at the Greenbelt Library. That will also probably come Monday, be in my profile on my Instagram page. Chappelle has one last question. Where do you get your VAs? Good question. So we initially got our VAs from Upwork.com, and we got them from Upwork.com. We paid as probably $6, $7, $8 an hour. We trained them. We gave them scripts, trained them. Keith would meet with them, role play. We just hired a company, Riva Global, RE, Real Estate VA Global. So Riva Global, REVAglobal.com. They're $10.60 an hour. If you're interested, just contact me. I think there's like a coupon or affiliate program. I like them because they come already trained, and they come with a manager that manages them. We actually meet with the manager, and so that's what I like about them. They hire Riva Global hire the VAs. They train the VA, and they manage the VAs. Don't have to do that. When we were at Upwork, we had to do all of it. They do all the role play. They do everything, and then they give us a report. And then there's many others. There's InvestorVA.com, who's the same. They hire, they recruit, and they train their VA on real estate investing. So there's a number of VA companies, but we just recently went with the Riva Global. All right, you guys, that is it. Happy Friday. Yes. Yeah. Unica. Yeah. That's the website.com. RivaGlobal.com. Just go to it. I would just go to it and schedule an appointment. Let them know that we referred you, and just see what they have to say. I would do that now. Unica. I would do that now, Unica. All right, you guys. Take care. God bless. Lots of college basketball this weekend. I will be watching. I think I've got Duke, Keith. I've got Duke winning. Who you got?
I don't know. It's too early to call. Maybe Furman. Who knows?
Maybe Furman. Furman looked good last night, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So we've got one that, yeah, make sure you refer me with Riva Global.
Marquette.
Oh, he's got Marquette. I don't mind. I like who's the coach of Marquette? He's the coach at Texas and at VCU.
Yeah.
I forget his name. What's his name?
Shaka Smart.
Yeah, Shaka Smart. Yeah, I like the Shaka Smarts. I'm rooting for the Shaka Smarts too. Yeah, there you go, Shaka. All right, you guys have a good weekend. Eat a lot of buffalo wings, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good day.